Hello and welcome everybody. Much love to you all. Thank you so much for joining me here once again in the secret classroom on the FreeMelon Society. As usual, my name is Eli Martyr. Today we are going to be going into part 2 of understanding disease. And so in the first part, if you haven't seen the first part, please go back and watch the very first part of this series, which deals with the process and formula of how to make yourself sick if you choose to. And this time we are going to be going into the disease process. So when you start hurting yourself, poisoning yourself, stressing yourself out, or causing a taxation of your vital energy, there's a very predictable process of disease that is an extant phenomena. So we're going to be going into that today so that you can have a general framework to plug in your particular condition, what you're experiencing. And so we have just a more consummate understanding of what is happening during disease, okay? All right, guys, get comfy, grab a seat, keep it locked here and pay attention because, I don't know of any other plant-based channels that are going to give you this type of information. So, hope you enjoy and let's get into this. And just a general preface before we start. As we know now, or at least as we should know now, if you haven't seen the first video, go back and watch it. So as we know now, anytime you tax your vital force, all right? Anytime you cause more energy expenditure than your body can recover and you deplete your vital force, what happens is that vital force is not sufficient enough to start eliminating the natural byproducts, the natural waste products of life. And if it can't do that, then the disease process starts. So basically the whole health game is all about maintaining and conserving enough vital force at all times to be able to deal with elimination. If you do that, if you simply do that, then you are always healthy, you are always well, you are never sick, you never get disease. The problem comes into play is where our lifestyle right now generates exhaustion way more than we give credit for. So all the little things, all the little errors we do, they take away vital force more than we recognize. And then we get sick and we just don't know why. It's because we don't know what taxes us. Okay, let's get started here. So we're making the assumption that you start to tax your vital force beyond threshold levels. What happens? The very first thing that happens is stage 1 of the disease process, which is enervation. Enervation is the state where your body is not generating enough nerve supply to be able to manage or take care of the tasks that the body demands. You could also put it as if the body starts exerting far more energy expenditure than the vital supply is able to provide for, then it's the same thing. Okay, so either way, you're running into a deficit of vital force. What happens is the body is able to provide less nerve energy because it is impaired under the weight of nervous exhaustion. This first stage is very similar to what we talked about in part 1 of this video series. Enervation can be caused by many things, as we know. It can be caused by lack of sleep. It can be too much exercise, too much digestion, too much eating in the wrong combinations or bad combinations, thinking too much, worrying too much boxing, too much lawn mowing, too much gardening, too much stress in general, too much sex, too much temperature, too much cold, too much heat, all this, okay, on and on it goes. These are all taxes. None of these things are bad. It's just that you have to recognize that too many of them accumulate and they all require an expenditure of energy. It's just, very simple. So too much expenditure without enough recuperation leads to enervation. Now, since all the body's eliminative organs run on the same nerve supply that provides for all of these functions, if you have less nerve supply, then the eliminative organs cannot eliminate the byproducts of life efficiently. And when those byproducts accumulate, they start interfering with the body processes. Basically, elimination of waste products is impaired. So now that same liver, that same kidney, the skin, all of it, it now cannot eliminate toxins as well and as efficiently, as expeditiously as possible, or as usual. And so enervation is the result. Now, when this state of impaired elimination is sustained for a sufficient period of time, what happens? Well, you go on to the next stage of disease, okay? Your body does not fail to notice, okay? It recognizes that there is this state of enervation and it defaults to stage 2. The next stage of disease is toxemia. Basically, when toxic substances from whatever source saturate the blood and the tissues and congest the lymph channels, the lymphatic fluids and lymphatic channels, when that happens, then toxemia is the result. Toxemia meaning toxins in the blood. Emia, the suffix emia, means blood. So toxemia means toxic blood. Here's a little excerpt from Dr. Tilden explaining what toxemia is. In the process of tissue building, which is metabolism, there is cell building, anabolism, okay? Think of like anabolic steroids, that's cell building, alright? Okay, continuing on. So there is cell building, anabolism, and cell destruction, catabolism. The broken down tissue is toxic, and in health, when nerve energy is normal, it is eliminated from the blood as fast as evolved. When nerve energy is dissipated from any cause, physical or mental excitement or bad habits, the body becomes enervated. When enervated, elimination is checked, causing a retention of toxin in the blood or toxemia. This accumulation of toxin, when once established, will continue until nerve energy is restored by removing the causes. So-called disease is nature's effort at eliminating the toxin from the blood. All so-called diseases are crises of toxemia. Okay? So, that's what toxemia is, alright? That's in a nutshell. I can barely describe it any better than he did. So screw you. Let's go on to the next. So remember, everything the body produces as a byproduct is waste, right? Too much CO2 will kill you. Yet, CO2 is incredibly necessary for the maintenance of life on the planet. Uric acid. Uric acid is a necessary byproduct of breakdown and of metabolism. It's absolutely necessary. But, of course, an accumulation of it will kill you, will give you kidney stones, will cause acidosis in the tissues. It'll do all sorts of damage to you. Lots of free radical damage is associated with uric acid, excess uric acid formation, which in the absence of antioxidant supply by the body and by the diet can lead to problems. Anyway, so there's lots of ways that you can introduce toxemia into your system. We can also get more acute toxemia if we subject ourselves to poisons from the environment, from the external environment. And so in a manner of speaking, we can almost jump cut to the toxemic state, right? Depending, I'm sure. I should say that this disease process, you might be able to, in some certain situations, skip one stage and jump right to the next, depending on the severity of the offense. Okay, if that makes sense to you. If I go to my local plutonium processing facility and there's a huge vat of liquid plutonium, I don't even know if that exists, and big sign outside of it that just says death. Right? And I just, take a swan dive inside and start bathing in plutonium. I'm like, and drinking it and licking it, okay. I don't have time to go into enervation, toxemia. I just go straight to death. Okay. So you can bypass a couple stages.
There's nothing to it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky.
Okay, so stage 1, we've depleted our nerve supply and elimination is now impaired or checked. Because stage 2, now elimination is impaired and the toxins start to build up and saturate the blood in the tissues. When those toxins start to saturate the blood in the tissues, the body is in a state of toxemia. The next stage of the disease process is irritation. Okay? And so far, this should be making a fairly logical progression. It should be very easy to visualize how this would be the case, right? Okay, so our tissues are loaded with acids now, and that condition has been sustained for a sufficient period of time. Now, because the body doesn't deal with systemic blood and tissue poisoning, that poisoning starts to irritate the tissues. Right? The tissues are not supposed to be subjected to this type of acid load, and it starts to bother them. Okay, it starts to irritate them. Irritation is the result of when toxic materials linger in the blood and tissues for far longer than they should without being eliminated, which is probably going to remind many of you guys out there of your ex-boyfriends or girlfriends. Now, this lingering can only be tolerated for a certain amount of time before your body goes into a worsened state. The irritation phase is the phase of the process that seems to have been normalized in culture, okay? Because we live in a fundamentally sick society, a sick culture, a disease-promoting culture, a pathological culture, a pathological producing lifestyle. All right, that is what is normal. This is what everybody does because we all have access to very limited information about true health and true wellness. No, that's a lie. It's not that it's limited. We can find amazing information. It's just that it's not made forthcoming to you by the main sources of information that people, news media and whatnot, all this kind of stuff. Irritation, all right? Irritation is the state that has been normalized. So itchiness, runny nose, stiffness, queasiness, fatigue, indigestion, constipation, all of these things, okay? These are all things that we just kind of accept as how it has to be. And so we normalize irritation, but it's not normal. Everybody's doing it, but that doesn't make it natural. All right. It doesn't make it a natural modality of life. It is, in fact, a stage in a disease process. So what that means is if you notice that you have these things, then I'm giving you a framework with which to plug in this state so that you know that it's not just day to day. It's a process that you're going through that, if not corrected, will lead you somewhere down the road. So when we feel these irritations, it would be a mistake to write them off as simply the vicissitudes of life, right? We need to be able to pay attention to these things so that we can know where we stand. Irritation is like the alarm phase of the disease process. So now it is bringing to your conscious attention that something is the matter. This phase is the alarm stage. It's like the check engine light that is just suddenly flashed on. And like I was kind of saying before, you can also get more acute irritation. So if you go out and you alcohol binge, if you go out and you eat a lot of salt, a lot of caffeine, a lot of stimulating spices or condiments, you can feel that irritation pretty much right away, right? So you can get acute irritation as well. Okay, but let's just say the irritation alarm is ignored, okay? The check engine light comes on, you take a look at it and you go, it says danger, danger, danger. Whatever. Okay, let's just say you continue on. What happens is you move on to the next stage, which is inflammation. Inflammation is now an immune response of the body, okay? So the toxic conditions that have caused the irritation, they've been unchanged for long enough that the tissues are now damaged and they're now injured, okay? Under the crushing weight of the acidosis, right? The injury is characterized by pain, redness, swelling, and heat at the site of the injury. This is the stage where the physician has something to diagnose. Okay, so you go to him and he can throw you into a category of some sort of ailment or prescribe something in particular to suppress the symptoms of inflammation, which of course is not a good idea because what Vital Force has done is it has now made a conspicuous effort to funnel healing resources to the area of injury. And you wouldn't want to take any synthetic drugs or pharmaceuticals to interfere in that process, because now we're talking about counterproductivity. When we have inflammation of a particular area on the body, what's happened is the toxic materials have been collected and concentrated in preparation for a massive expulsion effort of those poisons at the site. Think of a zit, an acne, or a cyst, right? It's a lot of material that's concentrated in this weak, for whatever reason, this weak part of the body, of the skin or whatever. And now the tissues are engaged and conspire to remove that material in that particular area through the process of inflammation. So they're just trying to push out stuff. And depending on the character of each individual person's body, that inflammation can exist, anywhere. Right? And, we call these the itis conditions, right? So if you've gone through Enervation, which led to Toxemia, and if Toxemia was not checked, then the area got irritated. And then if that irritation still was unchecked, then the area got inflamed. So that inflammation can exist in any tissue. Appendicitis, inflammation of your appendix. Tonsillitis, inflammation of your tonsils. Gastritis, inflammation of the stomach. Hepatitis, inflammation of the liver.
There's nothing to it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can tell.
Nephritis, bursitis, right? All these itises. It's inflammation at different areas of the body. And so what happens is you go to the physician, and all they've done is they've just put into unnecessary categories different areas of the body where inflammation exists. But really, it's all the same cause. It's just a buildup of toxic material systemically that has caused inflammation in that area, but it's the same cause for all of it. So putting it into categories is good for business, because now that they can have a particular category that your itis fits into, and they can have a particular drug that they can sell you and make money off of for that thing. Now, if you have inflammation in many areas of the body, you can imagine how profitable this would be. So now they can give you all sorts of different very lucrative products to deal with inflammation, but it's the same cause, right? Which is just stop poisoning yourself. So anti-inflammatory drugs. Are these a good idea? Well, no. It's like the enemy is at the gate. You are the ruler of the kingdom. You see the enemy at the gate. The enemy has massed to take down your fortification. And you rally the troops. At arms, men! At arms! And get everybody to saturate the ramparts with archers and oil dumpers and all that kind of stuff, right? And there's all this chaos and commotion, people are yelling, and your advisor all of a sudden comes to you and says, you know what, sire? War is bad. And all of this chaos that the kingdom is experiencing, we need to put an end to it now. So what should we do? Let's send a massive medieval wrecking ball to absolutely blast through the entire rampart, thus destroying all of the fortifications and all of the manpower on those fortifications. And if we do that, then the state of chaos will just come to a halt, and there will be no longer men shouting and barking orders and running around. It'll just be calm. The only problem, of course, is the enemy is still at the gates, and they're still advancing. The only difference is now you've wiped out your entire army because you preferred peace and quiet over war. All right. You see what I'm getting at, right? This is what's happening when you take anti-inflammatory drugs. You are destroying the processes that your body has intelligently recruited and conjured up in order to deal with the actual problem.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the
So inflammation is the fourth stage of the disease process, okay? It's the final stage of the process that is reparative. It represents the body's strong effort to try to detoxify the area and repair the tissue, to cleanse and restore itself, okay? The next stage of disease after this is now degenerative, okay? So if by the inflammation stage the cause has not been removed, then the next stage now leads to a degradation, an actual breakdown of the tissues, okay? So let's get into that now. The next stage of the disease process is ulceration. Basically, at this part of the process, the body is just starting to succumb to the overwhelming weight of the toxic conditions of the tissues. An ulcer is essentially a sore, an open sore. What's a sore? Standard dictionary definition of a sore is a localized sore spot on the body, especially one such as an ulcer, with the tissues ruptured or abraded, and usually with infection. Now, of course, what they mean by infection is that the site usually has the presence of bacteria that are trying to repair the tissues. So it's not an infection, it's just what should happen, right? So ignore the infection part. An ulcer, standard dictionary definition for an ulcer: a break in the skin or mucous membrane with loss of surface tissue, disintegration and necrosis of epithelial tissue, and often pus. It's something that festers or corrupts, like an open sore, okay? So at this stage of the process, the tissues are simply starting to degrade and break down. The immediate area of weakness, all right, where the cells have been damaged the most, they start to literally break down and die, okay? So what happens in the ulcer is that the ulcer, because it's an inflamed area, but it's been subjected to the toxic conditions that inflammation, the most immediate layer, has broken down a bit because it can't deal with the poison load. And so you get a bit of an open sore, right? That top layer kind of leaves a gap where the cell tissue has been degraded considerably. So this is why the ulcer is typically an open sore. It's extremely painful, intensely painful, as nerves are kind of left open, right? Open to the atmosphere, or to the environment, I should say. Now, the body can use the ulcer as like an exhaust port for toxic buildup, right? So it can do that. And it is what is happening. Especially if, again, at that stage, cause is finally removed. But as the body is conspiring to do this grand repair work, and the cause is not removed, and the ulcerative condition goes for long enough, then of course what happens is there's a progression to the next stage of disease. The next stage of disease is induration. Now, I should say that the ulceration stage prior to, I believe that there are many instances where you may not have ulceration and you can go straight to the induration phase. So from inflammation, and there starts to be an accumulation, but it isn't an open sore. Depending on lots of factors that are beyond me, you might go right to the induration stage that I'm about to describe here to you, right? So basically, ulceration may happen or it may not, and you might come right to this phase. Induration is the stage of the process where the body is recognizing that this offense of the body tissues is not going away. And it's tried inflammation, the cause isn't going away, so what it has to do in defense is harden the tissues, concretize the tissues, make them scar tissue, all right? Induration is like a scarring up of the inside. Your body is trying to coagulate and turtle up to make it more resilient against the toxemic affront. It's your body trying to seal itself off from the poisonous environment. Also, the toxic materials that are particularly concentrated in the site of injury, what the induration process is doing is it's encapsulating those toxic materials so as to prevent them from kind of just spilling out to the rest of the body. It's actually acting as a bit of a quarantine for toxic materials and protecting them, kind of like safeguarding them. Safeguarding. Not safeguarding the toxins. It's not like your body sees something that's harmful to it and says, hey, give me that. I want to protect you. But what it's doing is it's safeguarding them. It's like sacrificing that area of your body and using that as a quarantine zone so that the stuff doesn't spill out to the rest of the body. It's beautiful. It's beautifully intelligent, right? This is important to know because this stage is often confused with cancer. So a very, very high percentage of the time when people go to get lumps checked out, their lumps are the induration stage of the disease process that can be misdiagnosed as the cancerous stage. And that's good to know because you can still heal. You can still recover from the induration phase. Again, it requires a swift and immediate removal of cause, followed by a healing modality that leaves you with an abundance of vital force so that your body can intelligently use that supply of excess vital force to do the repair work that it's always wanted to do. So you do those two things. Remove cause, remove things that hurt you, and do things or don't do things that tax your vital economy. So you have an excess of vital reserve and your body can recover from virtually any of these stages of the disease process. The final stage of the disease process is the cancerous stage. Okay, so the induration process, which can last indefinitely for whatever period of time, the cause doesn't go away, and even that scarred up, quarantined, hardened part of the body that is swollen up, serving as a protective mechanism for that area of injury. At some point, even that breaks down. The tissues start to degrade even more. The cells lose proper functioning, and the area is said to become cancerous. Okay. We have this thing that we call metastasis, okay, which is what we imagine is spreading of the cancer throughout the body. So if you've got a cancerous area of the body, what is said to happen is the cells go wild. They literally transform into evil entities that seek out other healthy tissues in the body and concoct a diabolical, maniacal plan to make other tissues in your body just as cancerous as they are. You know, ha ha ha, twiddling the fingers type of thing. To deal with that, I'm just going to read a little excerpt from What Really Makes You Ill, because it does a good job of tackling this metastasis thing. Okay, so this is from What Really Makes You Ill by Dawn Lester and David Parker. This highlights another poorly understood aspect of cancer, the return of the cancer, or metastasis, as it is called. The WHO fact sheet explains that one defining feature of cancer is the rapid creation of abnormal cells that grow beyond their usual boundaries, and which can then pervade adjoining parts of the body and spread to other organs. The latter process is referred to as metastasizing. Oh, damn it. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Metastasis frequently occurs in a different organ or site from that of the primary cancer. It is for this reason that it is also referred to as secondary cancer. Now, the medical establishment view of metastasis is that the original cancer was not completely eradicated by the treatment, and that the cancer cells have migrated to a new location in the body. However, this cannot be the case. The idea that cancer cells spread to other parts of the body and invade other organs is erroneous, as it completely contradicts cell biology. The establishment definition of a cell includes the statement that complex organisms are built up of millions of cells that are specially adapted to carry out particular functions. The process of cell differentiation begins early on in the development of the embryo and cells of a particular type, bracket, e.g. blood cells and liver cells, close bracket, always give rise to cells of the same type. Okay, so let me read that again without the brackets. In the development of the embryo and cells of a particular type, always give rise to cells of the same type. The flawed establishment understanding about metastasis is recognized, albeit to a limited extent, in a January 2017 article entitled Gene Discovery Could Shed Light on How Cancer Cells Spread, which admits that, quote, the underlying mechanisms that control how cancer cells spread aren't well understood. Close quote. Cell specialization means that cells of one organ do not spread to another organ. Interestingly, metastasis does not seem to be a natural progression of cancer in laboratory animals, as explained by Dr. Tony Page in Vivisection Unveiled. Quote, artificially carcinogen-challenged laboratory animals do not normally develop metastases at all. Close quote. This is a significant comment that also highlights one of the major problems with the use of animals in disease research experiments, which is that disease under investigation is often induced by artificial methods. This means, therefore, that researchers are unlikely to be studying the same disease. The creation of artificial diseases means that it is not possible to draw meaningful conclusions for human health from the results of animal experimentation. This is one of the most potent arguments against the use of animals for disease research studies. Okay, it kind of goes on. But what's important to recognize about that is that because cells are differentiated from the very outset of life, right? Like a liver cell or a lung cell or a pancreatic cell or a skin cell or whatever. Your body is extremely intelligent. And each particular cell has very, very strict programming to be only that type of cell and not any other type of cell. Like a liver cell is not going to travel to your colon and convince colon cells like, hey, become a liver cell. And the colon's going to be, yeah, sure, why not? No, that will not happen because the result is chaos in the body. So that's what the author means when they say that the concept of metastasis is completely antithetical to cell biology. So what's really happening in metastasis is that the environment is just so polluted that other areas of the body go through the same process, right? So it's just another area of the body where the cause has not been eliminated, where now that area has become weak, and now another area has been weak. So it seems like the cancer is spreading. The cancer is not spreading. It's just that the environment is still polluted. Okay. Now, depending on the level of degradation of the body at this stage, very severe cancers can start to be difficult to recover from, depending on how weak the person is, right? Because now, if the organs of elimination have been so damaged, even rest and recuperation doesn't really cut it anymore, because the organs have been so corrupted that they can't do their job even if you give them a little bit of rest, right? So this is why it starts to become dangerous. Now, your best option is always going to be harsh lifestyle changes. Go, do the aggressive fast, emergency fast. No time to be, dancing around the subject anymore. It's got to be like hard healing mode, and that's your best chance of recovery. In mild cases of cancer, or even the induration phase where people mistake cancer, those are very, very recoverable. You just remove the cause, let your body go to work. But in the extreme end of the cancer phase, very often you can recover. I would say most of the times you could recover, but sometimes it's harder to recover. And most of the times where it is harder to recover, it's because the person is doing chemotherapy and radiation, which just poisons your body even more and more, and you're just not able to recover. Okay? That, ladies and gentlemen, is the disease process. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Hopefully this gives you a bit of a framework to be able to plug in what you see happening in the dietary health world around you, so that you have a better, just a kind of a better understanding of how that whole process works. All right. Thank you so much, and much love to you guys. Thank you so much for all the support you've given me over time. Really enjoy putting out this material for you. So if you like sitting in on the secret classroom here with me on the FreeMelon Society, then make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, give it a thumbs up. That'll always help me out. And wishing you all the best. Much love, mwah, big hugs, and we will see you next time here on the FreeMelon Society. Okay, thanks guys. Take care.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar.